Welcome to the Stage Analysis Members Weekend video. Got a fair bit to run through tonight, so I'm going to start today with looking over the US stocks industry groups in the free part of the video before moving on to the major indexes. Got the IBD. Let me flick through here just to run it off the top of my head. IBD industry groups bell curve bullish percent to compare against a few weeks back. See what's changed in that. Have a look through the major market breadth charts to help determine the weight of evidence for doing the watch list stocks in detail. It was a big post today actually with the watch list stocks. There was quite a few in the weekend group, but mostly from a couple of areas. So with the semiconductors and mostly obviously biotech and pharma stocks, healthcare in general is a big theme at the moment. So there was a lot of those coming up in the watch list stocks, but only a few group themes as such. Before finishing with a look at Ethereum on multiple time frames, as this was attempting to break out yesterday on an intraday time frame, but obviously it's still in stage 4 on the weekly chart. So have a look back through that and see if it's attempting to make a turn or not, and where it is overall in terms of stage analysis on the different time frames. Right, so let's go back to the industry groups post first of all. So I posted this on Friday after the close, so same as I do each week, where I cover the US stocks industry groups relative strength rankings, and I always start by looking at the groups with the top 12 with the highest RS scores. I post the thumbnail charts of those, a little bit of a commentary to say what's been going on. So for example, this week coal continues to be here in the top spot. It's been the top spot for a good few months now, but there was something to note this week in the fact that the oil groups have dropped out down to fifth place. One of the final oil group to drop down 5 places. I mean, it's down to 7th or 8th even, and basically, so that's a big change in behaviour. So if we go to the actual groups here, you can see the integrated oil and gas here actually like now dropped off. Energy, it had been energy for a good 3 months or so, had been the top 4 spaces. So now all of the 3 major oil groups, integrated oil and gas, exploration and production, has dropped down quite a lot now. You can see it's dropped off another 13 this week. It's down to 28th overall there. So, and what's the other oil group? There's another one down there, energy. It's gone even further. So, but yeah, it's dropped off. Anyway, let's go back. So coming back to this, obviously I highlighted that and then talked about the fact that pharmaceuticals is a key mover this week. So basically the pharmaceuticals group and healthcare in general has been rising up the RS table, but as we can see here on this weekly chart, this is made a stage 2 continuation multiple months back in April time here, and has since been going sideways in what's known as the backup range. So with a brief spring underneath the range back into the previous stage 3 range. So if we look at this in the actual group charts, so go to the actual chart here, so you can see on the weekly here, this has been outperforming since December time now in terms of relative strength. So massively outperforming the S&P 500, even while it was still forming in stage 3 here, and a little double top area in here where it failed and started to pull back in. So that's why it turned from stage 2 into stage 3 in this area here, but then managed to make a continuation breakout to new highs. So then rejoined stage 2 again once more, brief spring underneath, and is now consolidating fairly tight closes for the last 4 weeks now, even though it's moved down, up and down a little bit, with some demand tails on here into the 10-week moving average there. So look at the daily chart of this, you can see these levels a little bit more clearly, a little local range that's been developing with a short-term buying climax, automatic reaction, secondary tests, and some spring type action in here where it started to move back up and out again, but need to see some follow through in this and for it to start to move through some near-term levels in here. So for a sign of strength, for it to make a continuation into stage 2, you'd be looking for this kind of action, potentially a VCP, before obviously attempting to make a continuation to new highs. If it can't get there, it starts to fall apart in here, starts to roll over, can't get back through these recent levels, then potentially starts to roll then potentially could turn into a short if it starts to get back through these short-term moving averages again. Big double top type pattern there, but in the near term, it's looking strong. There's lots of stocks in the group moving up and having a really strong week this week. I'll get back to the individual table here, so you can see in the last 12 weeks here, it's moved up 28 RS points. So it's come a fairly long way. Moved up another point this week to an RS score of 99 now. So in second place overall now, which obviously doesn't seem like much, only moving one in a week. But if we look into the actual group, you can see there was some huge moves in the group itself. So Friday there was some big moves in some of the names there. But on a 1 week basis, you can see there's been some strong moves in this group. It's quite a big group. So if we look at the bottom of the chart, there's 334 stocks within the pharmaceuticals group. So it's actually a fairly difficult one to move. Obviously, the smaller the group, the more obviously volatile it is going to be in the RS table. So something with 334 stocks in it is a fairly hefty group and doesn't generally make it up to the top or the bottom of the table easily. So showing some real relative strength in the near term. So let's have a look through some of these names briefly. Actually, let's go into the SCTR score and let's put these. Let me go back through here a second. Let me just close a few of those. Order. Let's do it by RS score. So obviously doing it by the SCTR score here. You can do it by, so these are the strongest stocks. They won't show the smaller one there. So let's have a look through some of these and see what we're getting in the group. So you can see PRPH. This is one of the strongest in the group. You can see since May, it's had a huge move, over 100% here. So let's see actual. Why am I stalling? Okay. Yeah, you can see it's had a 140+% move and consolidating near the top of the range at the moment. A little triangular pattern at the moment. So it's pulled back 16-17%. It's a fairly hefty pullback, but you can see it's still above a strongly rising 21-day moving average and hovering around that plus 180 R level, which is this line here. So it's just hovering around that level at the moment. So still in a strong uptrend at the moment. You can see the relative strength in the near term. We look at the weekly chart of this. You can see it's in a strong stage 2 advance, but in double top area here. So hitting major resistance. So it could be on for a pullback. Obviously, a pullback towards the 10-week moving average wouldn't be out of sync with that kind of area, and potentially could be a top-in area. But in the short term here, we had a stage 2 breakout area back here, pulled back into the range a bit, but didn't fail, didn't knock out where the investor stop loss would be. So rolled back in and continued back out again with continuation breakout, and been strong ever since. So that one's continued to look strong. RYTM, not so good. Massive week, 104.7%, but still in a major stage 4 decline, potentially with this significant bar this week reversing into early stage 1, but it's not the kind of stock you'd be interested in at that point. So it's obviously the complete opposite of what we're looking for. CORT, again in early stage 2 here, you can see a breakout move in here, failed initially, came back in, broke some stop losses, but then made a continuation move through this area here. So breaking out in early stage 2 at the moment, still near, could run up towards the top of the range, could form a potential cup and handle type pattern if it does. So we go back to the daily chart on this one. You can see the support level at the moment, which it pulled back into of an initial backup and is hovering around that plus 280 R level. So strong uptrend at the market, short-term uptrend, but we're looking for it to consolidate in this kind of area in here before making a continuation. So want to see it tighten up or form a broader range. Again, potentially some VCP type action ideally to then gives you a tighter kind of area to enter and have a stop if you did attempt that kind of one. So EOLS, this has come up in the watch list recently. So you can see on the daily chart here and the weekly. So we'll get the daily and weekly views up. You can see it's potentially in early stage 2 here. We'll get to the weekly first. See an original back here. You've got this original stage 2 breakout kind of area here. So it was breaking out into resistance, then managed to bust through resistance and grind its way through. Had a strong stage 2 advance, started to falter and roll over, declined in stage 4, and then we've had this double bottom type base. It started to break back out again, but didn't manage to get back into stage 2 until you can see the 30-week moving average was only just starting to turn up in this kind of area here. So it actually would mark a higher level. So didn't actually manage to get back into stage 2 till around this earlier area. So only just in the backup range at the moment for this one. And again, got resistance zones to consider with this on the weekly chart there, which it's still underneath at the moment. So still under resistance, but going sideways within a early stage 2 at the moment, so within the backup range. So if we look at it from a tighter perspective here, we're looking for some strong moves through this near-term 180R level, near-term highs, potentially testing the top of the range and breaking out. Again, if it does roll back under these short-term moving averages, then could turn into a short at that point. CBIO, that was no good. AV, this one again, potentially very early stage 2, but such a sharp move up and out. It's not the kind of stock you'd be that interested in the near term, as you'd want to see it consolidate for quite a while. And it's a very sloppy chart in its chart history, so it would tend to be one that would avoid. Lily, this one's a high quality one. You can see it's been on a strong stage 2 advance for a long time. Did dip into stage 3 for a little while here with the double top and the pullback in, but formed a spring pretty quickly in here and rallied back up again, made a continuation breakout, made the back up, and has managed to make further continuations up to new highs here. So potentially for a continuation to new highs on this one in stage 2. Again, the daily chart here, you can see these levels a little bit more clearly in the near term. So pushed up into short-term double top area on Friday. So if it can't manage to push through in there, be looking for it to tighten up around the 21-day moving average in this kind of area, a bit of VCP type action. MTK, another one that's been in a huge stage 2 advance since back in 2020 here. You can see the original stage 2 breakout back here. It broke out after the COVID shakeout into stage 4 there, so formed a big stage 1 range, hovered above the 30-week moving average for the most part. Stage 2 breakout in this area here, back up, but didn't come all the way back into the base there. You can see multiple tests in here, so big backup range for many months there before grinding its way higher and making multiple continuation moves to higher highs. But it's had a really strong run since October time. Now potentially bit of a change of behavior, but hasn't yet challenged that 30-week moving average. So a little bit of a short-term reaccumulation base at the moment. Could potentially turn into stage 3, but at the moment still hasn't had a change of behavior. So in the short term, we're just looking at it from a reaccumulation base type structure. So if we pull the rectangle across here, you can see a selling climax, buying climax automatic reaction, secondary test as an up thrust. So a few little up thrusts in here at the top of the range, a little bit of spring type action in here, potentially higher low, smaller range on a lower time frame in here, potentially looking for this to make a continuation break on stronger relative volume to new highs. So go down to the intraday chart here. This is the 2-hour chart. You can see a little bit of a shorter term structure within here that it's starting to form, but obviously would like to see that tighten up a bit in there. So this one, MCK, looking strong as well. APTN, another one, big jump up into stage 2 after a brief stage 1 in here. So got the stage 1 type structure, one of these V bottom type stage 1s that you get sometimes. So you get a V bottom move and then it forms a higher structure. So at the moment, it's made a stage 2 breakout through this area. You can see the 30-week moving average turning up. So the stage 2 breakout is at this point in here as it starts to break some levels. So at that point, you can see it's already had a huge move at the stage 2 breakout. So watching for how it develops in the backup range, anywhere in this kind of area in here. So as it's turned back down now. So it could take a while, but pull back to its 21-day moving average. So if it is a high type flag type behavior here, you can see that would be this kind of, we've got a potential high type flag type behavior going on, but obviously I'm probably not technically a high type flag, but it is tightening up in here. So looking for a continuation attempt, but like I said, if it can't, you'd be looking for a pullback into the range and for it to continue to hold in this kind of range. ARGX, another one potentially attempting to move out into early stage 2 again, but could be an up thrust, still in double top land at the moment. So broken multiple levels, here. So we've got breaks here, breaks of these ones. So potentially back into early stage 2 again. And in the backup range, we drop down to the daily time frame here. We've got this range that's starting to develop in here, holding above at the moment. So consolidating around that 21-day moving average. So looking for this to continue consolidating here and tighten up. You can see on the 2-hour chart here, it's pulled potentially into stage 3 on the 2-hour time frame there. But the weekly chart has got a big base structure, so if it does break out, that would have a reasonably large cause. So could potentially project for a decent stage 2 advance. GOSS, another one of interest here. Strong RS at the moment. Few strong days this week. Really big move of 43.71% on the week. It's still in stage 1 at the moment here. You can see this old support. It's managed to bust back through this area, short-term base structure in here that's started to come through. The 30-week moving average is only just starting to flatten out in here. It's broken a few levels low in the near term, but we've got a lot of overhead resistance. This whole range in here, overhead resistance to deal with. So obviously, especially near-term levels to deal with. So this one, potentially you'd want to see it chop around in this kind of area, start to form a higher base structure, start to build out into stage 1, but definitely a change of behavior in the short term. So be looking for it to respect that 200-day moving average on any pullbacks, and for these short-term moving averages to start to move up into a better order. So as you want to have your short-term 21-day above your 50-day and your 200-day. So this 200-day should be at the bottom of these two moving averages, not the other way around. So this one's still very early. CPRX, another one that's in, I'll put this in stage 3 at the moment with the move. We've got a potential structure forming here. Not totally a change of behavior. Had a big move here. That was a potential change of behavior, but recovered it. But then you got shortening of the thrust into the highs there. So it didn't made a breakout, but it couldn't make much progress there. So a little bit of the shortening the thrust in here, so starting to have a bit of lateralization, going sideways. See the moving average flattening out in here. So potentially in early stage 3, could have a double top in this one if it can't manage to break on through. But if it can continue to consolidate around this area, you'd want to see it consolidate with the 21-day moving average in this kind of area and start to tighten up for a potential little cup and handle type move there. Okay, that'll do for looking at that group. There's another group I just wanted to highlight quickly before I moved on to the bits was the semiconductors. So this week, if I go to the actual semiconductors group in the charts, that one. So you can see the semiconductors group, it's still in stage 4. So, but we've had a few reasonable weeks in it, and the bullish percent chart of this has actually moved back to a bull confirmed status on Friday. So from using the IBD group of that, so not the same group as this one particularly. This is, again, it's quite a big group, the semiconductors group, so reasonably hard one to turn around. It's only got an SCTR score of 26.8 at the moment, so it's a reasonably long way down the table at the moment, but it has moved up 21 places or 21 RS points in the last few weeks, now 13 again this week. So starting to show a move off of the lower end of the table again. So there are some stocks from this coming up in the watchlist scans this weekend. So there was about 3 or 4 from the group that I've highlighted. Let's just think off the top of my head. Let's change this order into SCTR score. So you can see the SCTR scores overall, the relative strength scores. There's not many in the 90s at the moment. These ones are not the best overall. We've got a few in here of interest. MPWR, I think of highlighting today. Let's have a look at a couple of these. So let's click here. So you can see on a ADI, for example, on here on the daily chart, looks sloppy, but if you put a base structure across this, you can see it's actually started to, even though it's broken down into early stage 4, it failed to make much progress and started to form a bit of a structure in here. So got a little bit of spring type action and followed through on Friday. So potentially this could be phase C moving into early phase D as it's moved back through that 50-day moving average, still underneath the 200-day moving average here, but you can see a little bit of a structure forming on this one on the weekly time frame, still underneath the declining 30-week moving average, but relative strength starting to pick up again, so outperforming the price action. So showing some decent relative strength in there in the near term. So I'd be looking for this one to start to break through that 170 kind of area, showing a bit of strength, and then starting to respect that and forming a higher structure, potentially up in this kind of area in here, as you'd obviously have resistance from the highs. MPWR, so I think I highlighted this one today in the watch list. We go to the weekly chart first on this one. You can see, again, a little bit of a structure forming in the near term, a little bit of a local spring starting to move back up. Hasn't followed through the moving averages yet. Relative strength, again, forming fairly in line with the S&P 500 here. Go down to the daily chart. You can see the kind of structure that's been developing on this one. So you've got local selling climax, automatic rally, secondary test, and up thrust, more obviously local levels in here, so some local tests of the range here. Finally made a spring, but a fairly minor spring here. So spring number 2, spring number 3, can't remember which one's which on that. It's where it only makes a small dip below, potentially a spring number 3, and a high-low test, and then follow through move. So it hasn't yet got through that 50 days, so you'd want to see it start to move up into this kind of area, potentially into the 200-day, and start to chop around in here before attempting a sign of strength rally and up and out type move. So that one potentially for that, but if it starts to roll over in here, it can't make the move. It starts to pull to the downside, and obviously we could make a major stage 4 breakdown in that one, as it hasn't yet made that major break to the downside. So potentially it could continue off to the downside like so many others have done, but obviously in the short term with the relative strength showing, we'd want to see, as I said, we want to see a bit more relative strength for it to start to hold above that 30-week moving average and start to pull up in the range and break some near-term levels. LSCC, another one attempting to form a structure. It's in stage 4, this one, so we've got some near-term levels to break at the moment above the 10-week moving average down there, but still below declining 30 weeks. So looking for that potential spring type action in here to follow through into the range, potentially move up and out, sign of strength rally, and continue on. LIC, another one. This one's in stage 4, most definitely. So you can see big stage 3 top in this one. See the change of behavior here. So started forming stage, when you're still in stage 2 there, some of the base structure forms in stage 2. You don't know you're in stage 3 until you get that change of behavior. So a little bit of double top type action in this area here. Couldn't manage to make it all the way, and lower highs all the way down in this one. So particularly weak one that rolled over, continued on into early stage 4, pulled back into the range before pushing down lower. So back into area of resistance at the moment. This is a major resistance zone on this one, still below a declining 50-day moving average. So a lot more work to do on this one. KLAC, intraday, potentially early stage 1, but a bit of overhead resistance in there. Again, another one that moved down potentially into early stage 4 here, but attempting to form a spring and pull back in again. So be looking for a sign of strength back up through some near-term levels here. So, and for it to start to hold above, make a move back towards the top of the range again. But obviously, if it can't show some strength here and fails into the 30-week moving average and rolls over, we could obviously be on for a much deeper stage 4 decline. So an AOSL, so I think I'll put this one in the watch list today. A little bit of a double bottom type pattern on this in the near term. So going on, so you've got some near term levels to break through, 50-day moving average there, but in early stage 4 at the moment. All right, I won't go through any of them more then now. So go back to the post on this just quickly. So I highlighted a few of those in the post for the weakest groups as well. So non-ferrous metals is the weakest group at the moment overall. So I said it moved back to the bottom of the RS tables as the copper futures continue to tumble with strong stage 4 declines. You can see the copper chart here moved down into stage 4 here, which I highlighted on that week, and then it's just obviously had a straight move down for the last 6 weeks without much in the way of an attempt to reverse here. So relative strength underperforming the S&P 500 dramatically there. So it continues in stage 4. Could see a potential rebound at some point, but at the moment still showing lower lows, which is obviously knocking those copper-related stocks such as FCX and Southern Copper, etc., down into stage 4 as well. So I'll post the rest of that. All right, let's go back. Let's move on now. Let's go on to the major indexes. Oh, actually, one more thing. I just wanted to highlight the industry groups weekly charts quickly before I moved on this. We're at 25 minutes already. So just this, you can obviously in stock charts, it has the 104 Dow Jones US industry groups, which I find really useful as you can chart them as well. Other charting software doesn't have the charts of the groups. So I find this a really useful part of stock charts in that I can look at the relative strength, I can look at the daily and weekly charts as well as the individual charts from the group and break it down into the subsections. So you can see if we scroll through some of these quickly, we're still in stage 4 in the vast majority of these. Aluminium stage 4, apparel retailers stage 4, asset managers stage 4, your auto parts stage 4, automobiles stage 4. So attempting to pull itself maybe back into the range here. So potentially could be a terminal shakeout. That one can move back in. So it could be pulling back into stage 3, but still stage 4 at the moment. Banks stage 4, biotech, even though it's pulled up into here, it's not made a move through that 30-week moving average yet. It's only just pulling in. So at the very best, stage 1A, but still in stage 4 until further notice, until we've actually started to chop around a little bit more and have that secondary test and hold. So still, even biotech there, which has been really strong recently, still potentially stage 4 at the very best, very earliest stage 1. You can see Brewers Index stage 1 on this chart. This one's been going sideways for a range now. This is quite a small group. So broadcasting and entertainment stage 4. Broadline retailers, which is where Amazon is in, stage 4. Building materials, stage 4. Business support services, stage 4. Brain training service, stage 4. So as you can see, practically every group is in stage 4. There's very few. So the fact that pharmaceuticals is still in stage 2, we've got a few of the top groups. Coal is still stage 2B minus. Let me just, so you can see coal here is potentially having a change of behavior, but it hasn't quite yet. So still stage 2B minus, borderline stage 3 at worst in coal. So it remains the strongest group. But as I said, there's very, very few groups that are not in stage 4. Computer hardware, which is what Apple's in, attempting to pull back up into here, but still stage 4 at the moment on the pullback. So if it does fail here, then you could obviously be off for a further decline. But if it can pull back in and start to consolidate above that 30-week moving average again, then could get interesting once more. So, like I said, as you can see, stage 4 across the board for quite a few stage 3s, but we're very, very lacking in stage 2 charts in the industry groups. So it's telling us this is exploration production, which was the second strongest group for quite a long while here. As you can see recently, it's had a huge move since the start of the year, but then we had this massive change of behavior week in here, and then it's just drifted down through that 30-week moving average since. So potentially could move up into the range here, but the fact that it's been so weak at the moment, probably expect it to make that V-type top that we've seen with a lower base structure, potentially chop around in this kind of area for a while before potentially going off to the downside. So which you use something like a chart of ARC as an example of that kind of behavior that potentially could happen. Doesn't mean it will, but that's the kind of behavior it's exhibiting at the moment, as it's really, really struggling for the last 4 weeks here in the lower end of this bar. So the significant bar, it's not even managed to get halfway up into that bar. So you can see it's really, really struggling at the lower end of the range in early stage 3 here, and could obviously roll over into stage 4 quickly if that's the case, if it can't manage to rally. But obviously if it can manage to rally, it could go on to form a much broader stage 3 range for a while and potentially go sideways for a long time. So fixed line telecommunications in stage one here, one of the few that's obviously developing a stage one base structure. A lot of overhead resistance from this range in here low, so sitting underneath that at the moment. It's kind of a ledge pattern that we don't really want to see on the weekly chart. You don't want to see any kind of move at this point. You want to see the stage 4 decline over here and a big stage 1 base before it starts to move back out again. So food retailers, one of the stronger areas here, recovering from a failed stage 4 breakdown back into the stage 3 range here. So I think that'll do for now.